Thank you for waiting. I'd like to introduce Roisin Cure. She's an artist who lives in Ireland. She was born in Wicklow, Ireland, which is on the east coast, just south of Dublin. And it's often called the Garden of Ireland, one of my favorite places to visit when I'm there. Now she lives on the west coast of Ireland, an entirely different creature. It's called the Wild Atlantic Way. And the seas can be ferocious. The coastline is rugged and beautiful. And I happen to be lucky in that I have one parent who was born in Dublin and one who was born on the West Coast. So I enjoy both of those environments a lot when I travel to Ireland. Roisin is an avid on-location sketcher who sketches daily and finds inspiration in natural settings, urban environments, and the inhabitants of both. Her medium is ink and watercolor. She uses a unique fountain pen called a Fude pen, which has a bent nib and is especially great for an expressive line in your drawing. She's the author of 3 books on sketching, including An Urban Sketcher's Galway, The Urban Sketching Handbook, Drawing Expressive People, and Dublin in Sketches and Stories. She's currently working on her 4th book, which will focus on County Clare, Ireland. Roisin has taught for the Urban Sketching Symposium, as well as workshops across Europe and the US. She has an active YouTube channel and hosted a wonderful podcast, The Sketch Therapist, that I would encourage you to seek out for Roisin's wonderful storytelling. Since 2020, she has run an online sketching group, Sketch with Roisin, sharing techniques with an enthusiastic worldwide community and promoting the joy of on-location sketching. Tonight, she'll give us 2 demonstrations. One is a short video of a value study, and the other is an on-site sketch of her kitchen. We figured since we're all kind of trapped indoors these days, it would be really nice to have something that you can pick up and try there, and you don't have to go outside to do it. The video will be recorded and it will be posted on the YouTube channel for North Star. And also I encourage you to check out Roisin's YouTube channel and her website. That's roisincure.com. Thank you all for coming, and I will spotlight Roisin now so she can begin the demo for us.
Thank you so much, Deirdre. I'm feeling a little choked up with that introduction because, boy, that was so nice of you, and it's been my privilege to work with Deirdre and all the other fabulous people from all over the world. And you know, I don't really know the States very well. I've only been a couple of times, but I just, it's such a pleasure to get to know the culture of the US and all the different places and all the different time zones and all the different climates. I never saw that coming, you know, so that's just a little bonus to the whole thing. So thanks so much for being here and you know, showing your faith in what I might be able to do. And I suppose before I jump in with everything, I'll just tell you, I'm very much a self-taught kind of a person. I spent a year in art college when I was about 17 or 18. And, you know, sometimes your style, your look, your soul, especially at 17, when you don't really know what it is yet, sometimes there isn't a place in the art world for that. And I'm sure many of you know what I'm talking about. You might feel that you're kind of on the periphery or you're outside it, or what you do just doesn't seem to chime with what other people do. But that's the beauty of art. That really is. That's not, as I think to myself sometimes, that's not a bug, that's a feature. It really is. And if you follow your taste, so that's why we're going to do this crazy sketch of my kitchen today, because when I was exhibiting in France a couple of years ago. And my dear friend Tazab, who's a wonderful artist from the center of France, his father took me to the Michelin Museum. So I bought a crazy Michelin poster and I absolutely love it. And when you love something and it's in your home, you know, you might put it in your kitchen. Lots of places you can put it, but so I think kitchens are a place where we like to have fun. It's not a living room where everything's formal. Sometimes you just put fun things in your kitchen. And to me, I just love drawing my fun stuff I have in my kitchen. So you're going to get a taste of Ireland, but also a taste of France, because I also have 3 little metal signs that were supposed to be a stand-in for a splashback behind my hob. But I don't know, 18 years later, there they are, beginning to fall to pieces, but there they still are. And I like to paint them. I've painted them lots of times. So this is about you finding some fun in your kitchen and just jumping in. Now, about the values, let's get to the real meat of this particular class. I'm always telling my students about values. I'm not very good at putting it into words, but what is an area darker or lighter than the area it's right next to? And I say right next to because it's all about the local difference between them. It's not like, oh, this tree is darker than the sky that it's silhouetted against, because you could travel to the bottom of the tree trunk, suddenly it's lighter than the area that's behind it. Okay, so it's always about local. And if you really get that right, I sometimes encourage people to really squint at your subject, and if you really squint, you'll be able to see the darks and the lights quite clearly. So you're going to be super looking and so intensely and asking yourself this question all the time. And you're going to see a few mistakes I made in the drawing that I'm going to show you today. And that's because I lost concentration for a second. So you really have to concentrate and you really have to focus and pay attention to what you're doing. And that brings us to the other side of what we're going to be doing today. Observation. I suppose values is observation as well. But with observation means looking at your reflections, how they work. I see the funniest reflections sometimes when people think they look at it and they go, oh yeah, reflection, and then they do it without looking at it. But you've got to draw what you see. And I know that's easier said than done, but you've got to draw what you see. I always say to people, forget that you even know, pretend you're an alien, forget you even know that such thing as 3 dimensions exist. It's your job to go back to the captain of your spaceship and tell the captain what you've seen and how to describe it in a little sketch, how it all works. Okay. So today, the little video that Deirdre's going to, I hope Deirdre, you've got the link to it. Because
am I going to run that?
Okay, cool. Okay, that's great. So what I did was I'm going to show you, we're going to watch this little video, and then it's only 4 minutes and something long. And then, and I'm not going to talk over it because all the talking is in it. And then when it comes to the end, I'll show you the original, and I'll just basically, I want to reiterate what it's about. I'm going to point out things and go, this is this is that, because it's only a few little things. It's just 3 little shiny metal canisters and a little ceramic teapot, and they're sitting on a black granite countertop, so they've got some good strong reflections. But in that few little subjects, there's so much to learn from it. And also you'll see in this little video, it's only one color. It's just one shade of velvet black. Velvet black is a Roman schmal color that I've recently started using. So I don't know if it's called velvet black with other brands. So do you want to play it, Deirdre? And we'll just jump in and see how we get on.
Yep. Let me just figure out how I'm going to do this with sharing my screen. So
oh no, that's okay. While you're wondering, I'll oh yeah, before we start, actually, Deirdre, why don't I show you everybody my materials?
That'd be great. That'll
yeah,
give me
because then and you can see about the link while I'm doing that, Deirdre, because I would like you to watch it knowing, you know, you'll be able to, oh yeah, that's the Fude pen line, oh that's the velvet black, or whatever it is. Okay, so I'll do that now. All right, so this is the boring bit. This is the this is the sketchbook. So this is the all-important paper. The paper has to be right for me. And when I used to use a German paper many years ago, and they discontinued it, and for the longest time I was having a complete panic because I couldn't find a paper that showed the beauty of the watercolor the way I wanted it to. And I went through so many well-known makes. You can think of them yourself in your head, because all the big names. And I was really despairing because I couldn't find any. And then I found Hanamula. And for a long time, for a long time, I used the, sorry, I keep putting it into the small picture. For the long time, I used the 200-gram watercolor sketchbook, and 200 grams, is it £90, Deirdre, or is it a bit less than that? Is it £75? Something, anyway, it's a good paper. It's not super board stiff. It's not, you know, I'm talking relative terms now because I'm not sure of my numbers in pounds, but your paper will not buckle when you throw a bit of watercolor on it. And what's lovely about the Hanamula texture of the paper is it really shows the beauty of the watercolor texture when it dries. So, I mean, I used the Fabriano Venezia books for a long time, but they're just smooth. Very nice to work on, but you don't get the texture of the watercolor. So Hanamula is my number one. Nowadays, I use the one I showed you there a second ago. That's the next one up. It's 100% cotton. Again, not really sure why that makes a difference, but I love working on it. It's 250 grams as opposed to 200 grams. And let me just show you about the paper because that'll give you a better idea. See that? It's quite stiff, it's quite heavy, and you'll see my little tiny sketchbooks, you'll really notice how thick and heavy the paper is. It's quite heavy. So that's my paper, and I don't deviate from that brand. Only I use the Clairefontaine to demonstrate in class. The Clairefontaine Studio Pad, it's called Gold Line. And it's very inexpensive. Well, it's not very inexpensive, but it's inexpensive enough. And that's the one I use in class. And that has got pounds written on it. That's 200 grams and it's £90. Okay. So this is Gold Line, Clairefontaine Studio Line. Fantastic for practicing and working like that. However, for me, because I'm a location artist, it's got to be a sketchbook, and it's got to be a hardback, and it's got to lay flat so I can scan it easily. Okay, that's the pen. That's the paper. This little guy here is my Fude pen, and I absolutely I love my Fude pen. And it's got a bent nib. Wait now. Do you see that bent nib? So it's bent at an angle of 55 degrees, and you might think, oh, I've dropped my pen, but no, you haven't. That brand is Sailor, and they're very trustworthy. Some people in my group have been saying, oh, my pens are scratchy. And so every now and then you do get a dud. But I have about, how many do I have? I have about 5 in my pencil case at any one time because I like to use lots of different colors. That brings us on to ink. So you can't really see this because I spilt it in my bag, but let me get you a cleaner one. This one is called Sketch Ink. And it's by Rohr and Klingner. And I'm sure, Deirdre, we can arrange to have all the brand names put into the email afterwards. The other brand for ink that I love is De Atramentis. They're both German, these two brands. And if you get the document ink, they won't clog your pen, and they're waterproof if you give them a little shake. There you go. Yeah, sketching by Rohr and Klingner. Klingner, Deirdre. Klingner. I used to call it Klingner.
There's an in there.
Yeah, there's a second N there. Yeah. Better just check, make sure I'm not telling any lies. But yeah, Rohr and Klingner. Typical, I've got a splodge of ink on the second part of the word. So I love all the different colors that these come. It's De Atramentis. It's DE Atramentis. Yeah, 2 separate words. DE.
Okay, I'll put those in.
Yeah, and the nice thing about these pens is they don't clog these inks is they don't clog your pen. However, be careful of the blacks. We all are seeming to find difficulties with blacks. Anyway, never mind. My favorite color is brown, and I love to have a pen with this lovely color called Emma because it's great for foliage. Absolutely fantastic for foliage. Now, those are my pens. I always have a white gel pen in my pencil case because you can't rub out a mistaken pen but sometimes you want to get rid of it. It's annoying you too much. So I just use my white gel pen when the ink is dry. Make sure the ink is fully dry. It does take a second or two. The Fude pen puts out quite a lot of ink, which means it takes quite a lot of time to dry. All right. And the Sailor isn't the only brand. You can get very inexpensive brands. This one is a Swan, I think, and I think it's by Jinhao, Jinhao. There's an awful lot you can get. I mean, they're from China, but the Sailor is from Japan, and it's a bit more expensive, but I really like it. They're my number one choice for reliability, and you can use them reverse as well, which is nice. Just don't use a paper that has too much texture because it can snag the nib. So that brings us on to the most important thing of all, which is the watercolor itself. Well, I don't know if the ink is more important. Swan by Jinhao, that's it, yeah. So this is a box of the paints that I use, and that's the before picture. I hope you won't get too upset when you see the after picture. This is what they look. Well, that's not too bad, is it? I cleaned the palette, so it's not too bad. But as you can see, I've shoved a few extra colors down the center, and I'll talk about the colors that I use as well. They're nothing crazy. Well, not the main ones anyway. These paints are by Roman Szmal, Roman Szmal, and Roman is Polish, and he's a watercolor manufacturer par excellence, and he's just a great guy. He's great fun. He's great fun to work with. So when I say work with, I sell these in my little website shop. So that's why I work with them. So there's those ones. And just for this, just so you know, Schminke commissioned me to do an urban sketching set, I should say, urban sketching set. And that's a very nice, there you go, there's the colors. It's a very nice basic set. And I don't know if you can tell, but the colors I choose, sorry, I just keep knocking things. And these are the colors I chose as well. I don't know if you can tell, but I tend to go for very bright colors. Number one, I'm an urban sketcher. And number two, I always think you can mute your colors by mixing them with other colors, but you can't make them brighter. So I don't know if that theory holds. I'm not sure if it does, because I tend to go very sludgy these days. But yeah, that's what I do. So that's my paints, my ink, my pen, and then all that remains is my brush. So I'll just dig out my brushes here. I have this very beautiful one. I always use travel brushes. So travel brush being one that folds into itself, and it means that it's always protected when you're out and about. And this is a Kolinsky Sable. So this is the fancy type. I'm not too sure what this one is retails at. I just know it's expensive because it's made out of a poor unfortunate Kolinsky Sable animal, I suppose. But what's wonderful about the natural hairs, the natural fibers, is that they hold loads of liquid, and that means you're there painting your sky and you don't run out of water and sky, so you don't end up with brush strokes. Whereas with this is your entry-level travel brush. It looks very similar, but this one is pure synthetic. It's got a great point. That's one of the advantages to the synthetic brush, but it doesn't hold a huge amount of water. So you're painting away and suddenly your skies just run out and you're left with a big, that's not a Rosemary & Co. That's not a Rosemary & Co.
Okay.
This one is a Rosemary & Co. So Rosemary & Co. R13 is one of the favorite brushes of the urban sketcher. It's a travel brush, and what's good about it is it's half sable. I don't know what the proportions are, but it's part natural and part synthetic, so it's a great blend of the two. You've got the lovely point of the synthetic, and then you've got the wet ability, if you like. I don't know what the word is, the reservoir nature of the Kolinsky, of the natural fibers. I think that's all. The last thing I'd say is I have started using travel brushes an awful lot. Water brushes, where you've got the water in the handle. These are very hit and miss, because sometimes you squeeze them. Some brands aren't great, and you squeeze them and the water just explodes everywhere. But this brand is Sakura. I really like it. Sakura, Sakura. And I went for the small little guys. because I'm in the process of designing a sketching bag, and I wanted to have the water brush next to the pen and at very different heights so that you could grab it. It's not a very incredible reason, but that's what I did. A good tip for these is, because they're small, you run out of water quite quickly. So it's a good tip to have maybe 2 or 3 of them in your pencil case. They don't take much space. Always fill them before you go out. Otherwise, it defeats the purpose of being able to sketch at the ready. And the wonderful thing about these is you're not confined to somewhere where there's a tap, faucet, or you're not confined somewhere where they don't like you having open water, like a museum, or maybe, I don't know, there's lots of places where you want to be a bit subtle and keep it low key when you're doing a bit of urban sketching. And the three watercolor brushes in your set is also useful because it's kind of annoying when you're going from like Payne's gray to a pale yellow and you've only got one brush, because you have to squeeze it through to get rid of the darker color. So maybe a little tab or something. I haven't done it yet, but I'm thinking a little tab to show this is my brush only for light colors, and this is my brush only for dark colors, and so on. So I don't think that's it. That's my entire kit. It's very small. It's very, very small. And I better just show you my latest little, I keep putting it under the camera. This is my latest little amour. This is a selection of 5 colors from Roman Schmal's latest watercolors. He sends me colors every now and then to try out. So I chose 5, 2 colors, if you like, red and yellow, and believe it or not, the others are 2 grays and 2 browns, because I just wanted to see what could happen with a really low-key number of colors. And in fact, one of my recent videos on YouTube shows you what happened when I did that, and it's very fun. It's very, very fun. But the reason I'm showing you today is because this guy here is velvet black. And normally I haven't used black as a watercolor for 10 years. I've always used dark blue, indigo, Payne's gray, but I decided to just for a change, I decided to try velvet black. And I'm very excited about it. I'm very excited about it. It's semi-transparent, and it's really, really nice to use. So so that's the color I did the value sketch in today, and that's the one you're going to be seeing in the video. And with that, I think we're ready to watch the video. Okay, this is going to work.
Says my screen is sharing. Can you see it now?
Yeah, we've got it. And press, if you hit the little expand button at the bottom, I think it should fill the screen, right?
Yeah, I just did.
I'm going to show you the importance of 2 things: of accurate drawing and of really looking hard at the values that you can see in a sketch. So here's my kitchen, nicely polished, as you can see, to provide a nice subject for a sketch. And whilst I love painting all the colourful things I have, today I'm just going to use one colour, which is Velvet Black by Roman Schmal. So I start off by making a sketch of my shapes using a watercolor brush and some dilute velvet black. So to overcome that fear of the blank page syndrome, I have used a dilute watercolor in the velvet black that I'm going to be using just to sketch out my shapes. And you can see the reflection of the teapot is very dilute indeed. Probably better to use it really dilute than a little bit darker, which is what I used. I am making the reflections go straight down. They are as if the worktop is a hinge. So even though my reflections on the canisters are a little bit off to one side, they shouldn't be. They should be completely vertical. Everything gets flipped, even the highlights.
I don't know why that's happening.
Even the highlights on the teapot.
It's fine, Deirdre. It's just bandwidth.
I'm using my brown ink, my De Atramentis document brown, to pick out the lines that I like or that I don't hate. And I'm also using this stage to correct any wrong lines that I may have done. Time for my first layer of paint, which is a very dilute velvet black, put on with my water brush, just because I'm standing up, leaning against the worktop in my kitchen, and it's much more convenient just to load up a water brush and work away. So the first stage of the painting, I pick out the lightest shade of grey, so the grey that's only just off white, and I use that for everything. And then I darken up anything I can see that's a little bit darker. I should really have made a separate video of that stage, but the line between the very, very lightest and the next lightest is a little bit blurry because sometimes you want to add a slightly darker layer before the first one's fully dried. Okay, I've started to add some darker layers, waiting for the paint to dry in between. And I'm conscious that the canisters are slightly darker in the reflection than they are in the subject itself. I've left the highlights of the teapot, the ceramic on the teapot, completely unpainted, as has the corners. The corners of the canisters have also been left completely unpainted to show the glint on the metal. The little brass lids have also got that shiny little glint on them. So I've painted those with a kind of a striped array of strokes with the velvet black. I've started to darken up the back of the counter, the granite countertop, in a very, very undiluted velvet black to make it as concentrated as I possibly can. So I've just, I suppose, continued in this vein, looking for bits that are darker, like the dark reflection on the teapot, the dark reflection of the little wooden board that the teapot is sitting on, and of course the reflections of the canisters. But all the while I keep the highlights completely bright so that you get that feeling of light. The watercolor I've used is Velvet Black, number 263, a semi-transparent color by Roman Schmal. The ink is Diatramentus Document Brown, and the paper is Hahnemühle, 100% cotton, my favorite paper. I believe that knowing your values will really, really help you make your sketch look realistic and believable when the time comes to paint it in full color.
Okay. Thank you, Deirdre. That's perfect. Okay, yeah. So before I start just summarizing what I did here, you'll recognize this this corner here is what I did there, and you might notice how different it is. Obviously the color is different, but it's more than that. I tend to, I'm quite literal as a sketcher. I tend to do exactly what I see, and that includes the scale that I draw it at. So if I'm closer, then you're going, I mean, it's obvious really, you're going to get more detail. So this, I was leaning with my back against the opposite side of the counter, so I was quite close to it because I want to get some detail in the little teapot. But for this one, I was on the other side of the counter because I wanted to get in this whole strip. So you can see it's much rougher, but the same principles apply. So just to give you a quick idea of what I wanted to get across there, your reflections are always directly underneath the subject being reflected. I tried very hard to get the roundy shape matching, which I think I did, but what I didn't do was get the size matching. So my teapot in the reflection is a bit fatter, a bit bigger than its subject. So that's just a mistake. That's quite simply a mistake. There's nothing artistic about that. When you want to do anything shiny, you leave it completely untouched. And I always think this is a very simple thing. And yet so many people tell me they find it so hard to resist fiddling with an area that's supposed to be shiny. Just resist temptation. Do not touch it. Because if you do, the second you put even the slightest layer of color on a highlight's gone. Shine is gone. So so what I wanted to show you with using just the velvet black was how to be aware, I suppose, be aware of the difference in darkness, the difference in that's all I can think of as to say, difference in value, the difference in darkness between one area and the next. So let's see what happened when I decided to jump in and do the whole scene. Okay, so I hopefully we'll get a nice clear image. Sometimes the Wi-Fi doesn't cooperate 100%, but I have an uncannily good track record. You would think out in the west of Ireland that my Wi-Fi would keep dropping, but to this day I'm baffled. It's actually pretty good. Now, I wish I had enough space to have you look at this scene as well as the one I'm going to draw, but I don't think we can do that. No, there isn't any way to do it. But what you will be able to do is, I'm going to have to prop this up so I can draw from it. And what you will be able to do is, you'll be able, I'll make sure you get your hands on a nice fair copy, a nice scan. And then what I sometimes get my students to do is have two devices. I mean, so many people have a tablet plus a phone or whatever, and you can have the picture, my picture on one, and then you can watch the video on the other, and that way you can see what you're doing. So it's not, perfect, but it does go a long way. So I just want to tell you what's going to happen here. I am going to use my brown Diatramentus ink. So this is my attempt at trying to tell my colors apart. And I took the sticky label off one of my pens for a YouTube video to make it look nice, because they look awful like this. But all I was left with was a black sticky residue that I can't get off. So never mind that. When I draw, I try not to close off any lines until I'm sure of the distance that they're going to take up. So for example, I go as far as the top, the side, and maybe a little bit of the bottom. Look, I better just start before I keep talk about it. The only thing, because it's much easier for you to see by doing rather than hearing. The only thing I'll say is, I was telling Deirdre and Lynn earlier that I didn't want to be bothered with drawing the glasses in this little cupboard. So I use that for my swatch area because I wanted to think through the color choices. So I tend to go for less rather than more when it comes to color choices, because you can clash so easily with watercolor. So for example, I've got the light colored wood of the knife stand, and I had a bright yellow here on the back of this little poster, and then I had cream here, and I had the goldy there. So they're kind of yellows but different. So I decided to bring them all into to these two tones. I've got, this is burnt sienna. I should write down these as well. Burnt sienna plus yellow ochre, and then this one is yellow ochre plus Aquarius yellow. And when you hear Aquarius yellow, you might think, well, what kind of yellow is that? It's just the brand name of Roman Schmal. He has these colors in his range called Aquarius. This is Aquarius green. And I always think of Roman mixing his watercolors and going, I'm not going to do a Polish accent. That would be not good manners. And anyway, I'd do it wrong. But I always think he comes across a really lovely color that he particularly likes, and he slaps Aquarius on it as a description, because there's no other way to describe it. So he has an Aquarius orange, Aquarius yellow, Aquarius green, and so on. But Aquarius yellow is just a bright, clear yellow. It's a nice daffodil yellow, okay? So any of your yellows that look like a nice, clear, clean yellow will do perfectly well. So I am going to prop this little fellow up, and I'm going to put my page down, and we're going to get going. Now, what I do tend to do, I'm not expecting you to follow along because I am going to go quite fast. We want to get as much done as possible. But when I am in class with my students, I tend to either work in a sketchbook with a gutter on it down the middle, or I mark it with pencil, because it's very handy to know, to use it as a guide as to how far over your page you should be. All right, so I'm just going to jump in. So you'll see that when I'm drawing, I tend to be a little bit careful to not go too far. I'm not going to fill in this picture, because then I could end up having everything in the wrong place. So now I'm just going to estimate let's say this is the top of the coffee machine. I'm going to start putting the coffee machine in, and it is about just a bit below halfway down the page. So positioning your sketch, position your lines is very, very important. And I would say a very good piece of advice that I was given many years ago by an artist that I really, really admire is to stop before you put pen to paper and actually have a little think about what you're going to do. So I'm just going to draw away, and you can feel free to, you know, put your questions into the chat, and hopefully I'll be able to come up with an answer. Now, I'm not a technical watercolorist at all. I'm very much trial and error watercolorist. I've learned as I've gone along. So I will just do my absolute best to share with you whatever I know. So I'm just getting, as I say, I'm sitting there, and what's nice about drawing in the kitchen in the winter, if you have the house to yourself, I personally find it a really lovely place to be, because you can put on a podcast or the radio or whatever it is that you like to listen to. Now, you might notice that there's some difference in line thickness. That's what the foodie pen is all about. So you've got thin lines if you hold the pen with the reverse of the nib, and you've got a slightly thicker line if you hold it in a vertical position. So let me just show you what that looks like. Vertical position. I know you can't really tell when the camera is above, but anyway, I will just try and describe it to you. So I'm just, oh, and by the way, I know this is a real obvious thing to say, but remember, you are not making a photograph, you're drawing a picture. So wobbles and wrongnesses and things out of the right place is no problem at all. However, I would say, as soon as you feel, uh-oh, that's wrong, I did that in the wrong place, don't continue. Fix it, even if that means you've got a little bit of a mark where the wrong line is ending up. And the reason I say that is because you will not notice those wrong lines by the time you've painted everything in, partly because you're going to be painting on top of it and the line will disappear, and partly because your eye, it tends to see what's correct, which is terribly handy, especially when it comes to people. Your brain just kind of wants to say, oh yeah, you know, you'll notice the nose in the right place rather than the nose in the wrong place, that kind of thing. It's kind of funny how that works. So you can see the lines that I make are quite gestural and they're quite rapid. And it's just a fantastic way to draw. So I can see that the pestle and mortar is a little bit above. So I'm constantly looking to position. I notice the top of the pestle and mortar is slightly above the bottom part of the coffee machine. Now, I didn't go around and try and arrange anything here. So basically, some things might have been a little bit better placed if I'd sort of put things in front of things and so on. But I drew it exactly as it was. Plus a bit of cleaning that might have been a bit more extensive than normal, I'd say. Okay, I can see a mistake. So you see those lines of shine, they've gone up too far, and that's going to be very easy to fix. I forgot to do the flat bit of the tray. So those little lines there, I could just leave them. They're never going to be noticed, but I'll show you when the ink is good and dry, I'll show you how I get rid of them with my gel pen. So there's the bottom part of the machine, and here is the reflection, and there's a bit of a gap between the feet, and it's not difficult to see why. It's because there's these little feet underneath there, and so you get this little gap. So you can see how what I was talking about at the start. Look at the reflection. It doesn't read as a reflection yet. Okay. So another thing that is very useful to do is trust that you know what you're doing and that it's going to look good in the end. So this is an A5, Charles. Sorry, I know I'm not supposed to be answering the questions. It's just habit.
You go ahead, Roisin.
Deirdre, I'm so used to glancing at the chat on the screen and everything.
You can do our job for us. We don't mind.
No. I'm not even going to look.
So let me see who that is. Charles is asking what size Hahnemühle sketchbook is your favorite?
Oh, what size my favorite? Well, Charles, you're going to find out when we have a little bit of time later on. I'll just show you because I can't keep you in suspense. This is an A6. This is the tiny little fella. And I am just nuts about this. I thought this would be too small for me. And it turns out it's ideal. And I'll tell you, the main reason it's so brilliant is because as an urban sketcher, sometimes your time isn't your own for lots of reasons. It could be family reasons. It could be just, I don't know, rain reasons. It could be lots of things. And as a result, you need to get that sketch done really fast. And by the way, you've got to be careful with Fuji pens because they have chuck out so much ink that they tend to smudge. You've got to be super, super fast, and you're much more likely to get a really comprehensive sketch done, a whole sketch finished, if you I'm just going to bring this out here, and again I'm going to show you how I get rid of that mistake line. It's only a tiny little thing, but I want to keep my mount, my mat, as you say in the States. I want to keep that even width all around. Yeah, you want to give yourself the best chance to finish the whole thing in one sitting. So I do find the A6 absolutely a godsend. I really love it. Okay, so I'm going to hop straight up into the middle of the page here, and I'm going to do something like this. And this is going to be the glass on the cooker hood. And the reason I'm doing this first before closing off the picture is because I want to make sure I get my picture area in the right place. Now I am coming at it from a slight angle, so forgive me if the angles are a little bit skew ways. And talking of it, you'll develop the ability to make a nice straight line, but if you use a very good trick, which is to glance at the edge of the page to keep your line straight. As you can see, that one isn't very straight at all. Or the gutter of the page, and just eyeball it, and you'll find that you can make quite a straight line. And with practice, you'll do a very straight line. Oh yeah, and the other thing I forgot to mention is these little magnety guys, these fridge magnets, they're sold as fridge magnets. They're absolute godsend for keeping your page down, stops it flapping in the wind, and when you're outdoors. And also it's a great way to clip your metal paint box onto those little magnets, and then it means that you can get on with your sketch standing up. And there's my little knives and the knife block. It's an empty one. And you get on with your sketch without anything falling off around you, which is just great. So
Roisin,
yes, Deirdre.
Sorry, what size Kolinsky Sable travel brush?
Do you know, I bought them from Roman Schmal, and there isn't a size written on them, but I will tell you that it's probably between an 8 and a 10. It's okay. One or the other, or a non-specific size that just Roman does. I don't know, but that's the general size. And I'm looking for a travel brush that's bigger. And so far I haven't been able to find one, but I'm really hoping that Rosemary and Co will be able to fix me up with one, because I think they have one that's a little bit bigger. This is my little cooker hood. This is the rim of the glass. Again, you see the way I'm not finishing it? I could easily finish that with just like a little tick there, but I don't know how far it extends. I want to try my best to make it symmetrical. Here's the little metal bit underneath, and then that does that. And then that closes off like that. So I sort of build up the drawing as I go. And there you see, that's a bit longer than I would have made it. It's only a small little difference, but you know, these things are important. Okay, now for the fun bit. Hopefully my ink is dried enough for me to lean on the page here without smudging it. And I'm going to draw this. Let me just show you this crazy picture. I never saw anything so mad as I saw this poster in the Michelin Museum in Clermont-Ferrand, right in the middle of France. And I think it was made at the end of the 19th century, something like that. And even though I speak French, I'm still a little baffled. Obviously don't speak French that well, as to what it says. Basically, it says Michelin tires, the Michelin tires, les pneus Michelin, they bois l'obstacle. Just going to give myself a little round shape so that I can draw it without worrying about getting my shapes completely wrong. It says they drink the obstacle. In other words, you're driving along with your Michelin tires and you go over broken glass and they just drink it up. They drink it up. You don't even feel it. This is oh yeah, and it's got the competitors looking aghast beside him. So here's his crazy mouth. It's kind of nightmarish sort of a character. But it looks
Roisin, can you talk a little bit about how you approach getting perspective correct?
Oh, sure. So I don't know if this is going to be very helpful, but I tend to do perspective by eye rather than by rules. And what do I mean by that? Okay, going to grab a quick piece of paper to show you what I mean. To cut to the chase, the long and the short of it is that my perspective is not perfect, but I would prefer to have it less than perfect than perfect and not fun to do. Okay, so there's your eye level. All right, so you're sitting in your car, which I draw a lot for my car because of the weather in Galway. They tend to slope down towards until that line, until they match it more or less. And conversely, they slope the opposite direction underneath it. And then I pop my little row of houses on, or whatever the case may be. And then if you've got your 2 point, basically it's the opposite way. And I'm very, what's the word? It's very informal, but it's very enjoyable. And the most important thing is that I do measure, but I measure by eye. I measure by eye. So I do the exact same technique that I've been talking about in my drawing so far today, which is that I always take a little reading on whatever line. For example, I might say the windows are 1/3 and 1/2, and in the bottom third along the length. That's not a very good description, but it's all about proportions and it's all about observation. And one day I'd love to give you a class on perspective.
Yeah, I didn't want a lot of detail, but I know it for you. It seems to be more intuitive and using your eye rather than going by a formula.
Correct. I wouldn't say intuitive exactly, because I used to always struggle with anything to do with perspective until I got really comfortable with my own drawing technique, which is, as I say, always to start in one area and grow the drawing according to what line is intersecting with the line you've just drawn. And if you do that, it takes a lot of concentration, but if you do that, you won't go too far wrong. And I really ought to, learn the technique. I mean, I know Stephanie, Deirdre was saying you've had a class with Stephanie Boyer, and she's absolutely brilliant the way she does, not just the way she uses perspective in her sketches, but also her book on using perspective. It's one of the urban sketching handbooks that she wrote. I think it's excellent. It's really, really good. So yeah, highly recommend Stephanie's technique. But I tell you, I think Stephanie's an architect, and for architects, they really have to be, you know, quite exacting with their perspective. But I'm in the whole urban sketching thing for sheer fun, sheer pleasure. Just giving it this little crazy little arm here. So I like to take, I suppose, the lazy way out. This is his glass. This is his broken glass, and he's raising toast of broken glass, which is completely nuts. And I decided, as I was mentioning earlier, I like to use, where's my red ink gone? I like to have lots of pens with lots of different colors in them. That's not red. Here it is. And I don't use red very much because you know, it's not exactly your go-to color for nature and so on. But sometimes for urban sketching particularly, you just have to have your red because it's great for little things like road signs and things like that. And this is what he is saying, nunc est bibendum, which I did know it, but it's gone again because it's just strange. And I like to write, I like to, as an urban sketcher, as I say, I'm really here for the fun of it. So for me, making these funny little words and so on is great. It's great pleasure for me. And it says votre, and the typeface in this was, I don't know, someone whose standards of typesetting were about the same as mine for perspective, because they are really all over the place. Votre santé is massive S. So the rules for lettering basically are keep things the same height and the same width and so on, and keep everything uniform. But he has clearly completely disregarded this instruction. So let me just write le pneu mich.
Roisin, two things.
Yes.
Nunc est bibendum means now is the time for drinking. And
thank you.
And Carrie wants to know if you ever start in pencil. For some people, ink requires a lot of confidence in the result.
Yeah, I totally get that. And I'm going to tell you, we're all adults, and I'm going to tell you what happened that made the difference for me. I drew in pencil my whole entire drawings for a long time. I'd say 2 years. I discovered urban sketching in 2012. And I would, just like that, I did not have the confidence to start in pen. And I always wanted to, because I felt sure that I was losing something by drawing in pencil first, which, as it turns out, I was, because there's a spontaneity of line, and not just a spontaneity of line that happens when you draw directly in ink, but it's more than that. You want your voice as an artist to come out without any obstacles in the way. You know, you want to l'obstacle. And the quick way for you to do that is by drawing directly in pen. But I couldn't do it. It just would not come. It refused to flow and so on. And then one night, my dear husband was doing the dishes after a lovely meal, and we'd had a glass of wine, and I decided to draw the glass and the bottle on the table. And it was the days of early child rearing, so there may have been more than one glass. I can't really remember. But I found that my nerves and my anxiety about drawing directly in pen, it wasn't a factor. It just wasn't a factor. I had the Dutch courage, as they say. And I'm happy to say that I don't resort to alcohol in order to draw directly in pen. But something changed that evening, and I found that I had broken that little anxiety thing. And no, the answer is no, I never draw on pencil first anymore. Now, there is one exception, as Deirdre knows, because I'm doing a thing with some of my class nowadays where I draw little animals, and they're sort of real animals but transformed into little playful cartoon animals, and then I have them making a recipe or something like that. And I do find that I have to play with a pencil line a few times on a piece of rough paper, but that's different. That's not the same thing. That's designing. So of course, with designing, it might take you a little while to get the shape you're looking for when you're doing it out of your head, you know. So the short answer is nope, I do not use pencil at all anymore as an urban sketcher. Now, even after that night in 2014 or 15, it did take a little while, but I found that I was able to move away from pencil bit by bit by bit. In the end, so I went from drawing everything carefully in pencil, and then I would draw rough shapes. But by the time I stopped using pencil altogether, my pencil shapes were just the merest hint of a circle, the merest hint of a rectangle. It was just to place the stuff on the page. And finally, I was able to get rid of that as well, as the confidence just grew. Now, I've known a lot of people who never went through that lack of confidence stage. It's not very symmetrical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make that be the side of the flue, and this is going to be, see, look, this is what I do with mistakes. This is going to be all painted very dark gray anyway, so it won't be noticed. Just put in my little control buttons, and you can see I flipped the pen around to the back to get that really thin line for those extremely small little shapes that you don't want to have sort of dominating. So let's get on with this. Again, I'm asking myself, how far up those knife handles should this first poster go? So everything is drawn in relation to the line that is just gone before it. And that way, you'll never go too far wrong. But have faith and just keep pressing on with, you know, the thing where I said where you just have the merest, it's almost like a little placeholder with your pencil. See how far you can push it. Another little trick that people will sometimes do is use the back of a used envelope or something like that. A piece of paper that really, you know darn well that actually it's just a piece of trash and it's going to go into the bin. And that way it's just a psychological thing. It can be a nice way to get rid of your nerves, your anxiety. So I'm going to move that up a little bit because my saucepan's a little bit too high. So as I say, you can use these little tricks to get over mistakes. There we go. Sometimes I like to mark off, like with that little line there, where I'm going to have a highlight, because sometimes it's very easy to get into the flow of what you're doing. Just putting those really black little handles, they're getting the treatment with the black ink. I use the black ink very, very sparingly, and it tends to be used for things that are so dark that only black will do. But yeah, I use it very sparingly. So you can see the way the lines are beginning to fan out. See how slopey they are there, and then they're beginning to straighten. If there was any lines along over here, they'd be going in the opposite direction. So that's your little bits of perspective. Very, very simple, and nothing too terrifying, I think. And then I just did a little placeholder line across there. So I mean, you can use pencil for things like that. I have to do the little control knobs sticking up, and I want to make sure the line is straight above it, but you won't notice that there's a line behind those little knobs by the time you're all finished. There's that. But yeah, I have known the very, very rare person who has always just gone directly in ink. And I remember there's one fabulous girl called Adriana Gasparich, and she is living in Chicago, and she's a fantastic sketcher. And she has always used ink directly. Just some people just don't have that hesitation, but as I say, I always did have that hesitation, so I totally get it. This is this one, and these are just the little stand things that the pots sit on. Come back to those in a minute, I think. And then there is quite a lot in this drawing, but anyway, we'll fly through it. So these are the 3 little metal signs that my husband bought some years ago in France, and I just like them so much that I've just drawn them so many times. So it's you wouldn't think of something like that as a subject for drawing, perhaps, but little things like that can be so fun to draw. So that actually says Chocolat Meunier, but I can't fit the Meunier in, so it's not good. Yeah. So over to the tins, the reverse of my pen, just because it's just getting very, very fiddly over here. And I'm trying to draw these little fingers. She's scribbling on the wall. She's doing a bit of graffiti. And so there's a lot going on with the hands and so on. Now, let me just show you the original that I did. So you can see she's got shadows under her arms, but I knew that they'd be easier to put on in a gray color, but after the yellow was on. So you sort of make these decisions as you go along. And it says Chocolat Meunier.
Roisin, have you showed us yet how you use your gel pen?
No, have I don't think I have. Do you know what? I'll just show you here because I made a mistake here at the top. Oh, do you know what it was? You have to, it's very important for you to wait until your ink is dry. Otherwise, you're just going to get a pale brown. Look how it killed that line right there. It's gone. Now, it's handy that that's a white frame, and I'm not going to paint on top of it. You can paint on top of white gel pen, but you have to be super gentle with your brush, because you'll disturb the surface, and then it'll turn into white paint and mix with your watercolor. But it does work very, very well. I tell you, a really good place to use your I don't know why this says peppermint, but it does, sort of peppermint, but there you go. France. Yeah, when you're drawing like a menu in a restaurant or something like that, you know, blackboard, it's really, really enjoyable. It's very, very satisfying. I don't know why. It was very, very satisfying to write your lettering on the blackboards in white gel pen. So what I do is I give it a couple of layers of Payne's gray or some black watercolor paint, if that's what you use, and a good couple of layers and wait for it to dry. But you need to get a good couple of layers, otherwise the white gel pen won't show up. It won't look like nice chalk writing on your just going to bring this down a bit more. It won't look like nice chalk writing on your blackboard unless you've got a really, really dark setting for your white writing. Oh yeah, and if you make a mess of it, you can just take your brush and wash over it, and it'll just wash off. And then you can start again from scratch.
One of our members is saying extra lines on the base of the espresso machine. There were some lines.
Yeah, thank you for reminding me. Yep, indeed. So that's a good example, actually, because we are going to be painting on top of that a very, very, there you go, look. So it's not completely gone, but it's almost completely gone. Let's get rid of these little guys as well. Now, I will say to you that you should, it's not by chance that this is a number 10 jelly roll, and it's not by chance that it's the jelly roll brand. I have another brand here, which is Uniball Signo. And I wouldn't bother with that one. It's not gel penny enough, you know, like a white gel pen is an acrylic pen, and it's an acrylic, it's white acrylic, and you know, you want it to come out quite thick and quite opaque. So that's the brand I use. This is a bit tarnished at the bottom, and so is this one. It's kind of all burnt, and it's got a bit of a shine. Put those little burners in there. Bit messy, but it's conveying the right idea. If all else fails, a little bit of scribbling goes a very long way. In fact, yes, if you're with me for any longer, you'd see that scribbling, I tell you, it gets you out of so many difficult situations, like with foliage and all kinds of stuff. All right, so I'll just pop on make sure that's going to land where it's supposed to land. Pop on my little canister. So I'm going to make a bunch of these little rectangles, and I'm going to show you how the reflections should be. And there's even a little bit of perspective to be thinking of with these as well, which I'll show you now in a sec. So a reflection is an absolute mirror image of what's being reflected. The reflective surface is an exact hinge. It's an exact hinge. And I don't know if I'm going to be accepted to teach in Argentina. I just don't know. I'll find out in a couple of days. But the proposal I've put in is for painting boats in the marina, sketching boats in the marina in Argentina. And I was thinking of calling it, I had some great ideas after I submitted the proposal for what to call it. But one of the things I was thinking, if I could get across the idea that it's a dark mirror, a reflection is a dark mirror. I was trying to work with that idea, but I couldn't really think of something cool. In other words, the item that's been reflected, when in the actual reflection, it's a little bit darker than the subject. So your boat, your white boat, if it's in a turquoise lagoon, sometimes it can look like the reflection can be kind of a beautiful lime green, for example. Where I live, it's more likely to be like overcast, so the water is very sort of dark and gloomy, so the boat tends to be you know, really quite dark, but it's always a little bit darker than the reflection, the subject being reflected. So for example, this is a really good example. The pestle and mortar is dark in the reflection than it is in the surface, and I know this is black granite, so that is going to affect it. But even if it was an absolute perfect mirror, it's going to be darker in the reflection. So you can see there as well, a little bit darker. And also, do you see the way the curve of the lid is I don't know what the word is, concave or whatever, but it's going in the opposite direction to the top side. So reflections are very interesting to do, and they're actually a very easy win. And I know for some people like, reflections, but trust me, they're an easy win because you don't have to have a huge amount of you don't have to have like there's not a lot to them, put it that way. So I'm just going to pull this down here. This is my little cupboard, and if that line's quite straight, it's because my hand was gripping the edge of the sketchbook. That's a really handy little trick. And you'll notice I was a bit quiet there. And this is another handy little trick. If you want your line not to wobble, don't breathe. Just hold your breath for the duration of the line, because you know you'll go all over the place if you do that. So I'll pull this down here. Now, my husband built this cabinet, and I don't know how you build cabinets normally, but anyway, you can see one side of the cabinet, and then so the join is a not noticeable line, and then where it's got a gap, see, once again it's nice and parallel, because it's not so parallel up there because I had nothing to grip my hand against. And then I'm going to pop on the little hinges, and I'm going to make the line a bit heavier where the actual opening bit is happening, if you get me. And I'm just going to pop on a few boxes so that we can swatch away.
Roisin,
Yes,
Barb is
Deirdre.
asking what size the sketchbook is that you're using in the demo.
This one is an A5.
A5.
This
So
is
Barb,
A5.
that's
Yep.
about 5.8 by 8.3. And then another member is asking, do you understand that while the jar lids are convex, the reflection of the jar lids are convex?
You think maybe concave? Or-
Do you know what, guys? I'm going to stop you there, because one of the remember I was saying about the alien, right? The alien doesn't know about convex and concave, and all the alien does is draw what it sees. I'm carefully calling it it. But the alien doesn't know all these rules, and I want the successful sketcher ignores all the rules and draws what they see. And that is so much easier said than done.
Mhm.
It's so much easier said than done. But you'll find yourself constantly, especially with people sketches above all. So this little Michelin man has got a beard and a moustache. So I don't know how that works. But so for example, I was drawing my daughter and her boyfriend the other day on the train, and I found myself trying to tell myself things about noses and eyes and so on. And I had to stop myself and remember, you don't know how a nose works. You don't know how eyes work. Just draw the shapes and the shadows and whatever color you can see. So that is why it is so critical to try and forget what you know. I think it was Picasso actually who said, forget what you know and draw what you see. Well, I think everybody says it really, but forget what you know and draw what you see. All right, so let's get painting. And I am using this little cup here for water. I hope I don't spill it. It's a fantastic little guy. I think some of you might know them. It's a little collapsible thing. And they're made by Hanamulla. And I used to use a beautiful little oil paint mixer, like a little stainless steel pot with a clip-on lid. It's just brilliant. But lately I've started using these little red ones. But also lately, this is my velvet black. Also lately I've started really getting big into the water brushes, just because of the convenience. You'll never get a beautiful tip in a brush, in a water brush. That's just not going to happen, because they're just little plastic things. I've never heard of a water brush that's like made out of sable or anything. But what you lose in finesse, you'll make up for in convenience. So I'm just going to throw on. I'm going to try and find as many areas that are velvet black as I can. Now, we are not going to get time to do the second sketch, the landscape, but the good news is I'm sending you all that particular class. Let me just, where is it? I'll just show you to. So Deirdre is going to send it out to you, the recording of this class. So Deirdre was saying that you'd like to learn a bit about shadows, shadows in strong light and so on. So I hope you enjoy that. I think it's very different to what we're doing here. But and what's nice about it as well is that it was done from my car, and you know, I don't know what it's like around where you guys live, but where I live, it's so hard to find somewhere that has the two things you're looking for: a good view and somewhere you can pull in safely, that isn't blocking anyone, and that isn't, you know, somebody's driveway, or around where I live, it's just farmers, and they're just so busy all the time. You never find a field that isn't going to need access at some point during the day. So when you find a view and access, yeah, sorry, and sorry, it's hard to draw and talk. I should stay quiet. Okay, here's the little controls on the coffee machine.
Roisin, how long before you finish the ink are you able to paint?
Oh, well, it depends. It depends a little bit on the conditions, because you know, it's going to, if the drying conditions are, it's very dry, then it's going to be much quicker. You know what you can do if you're in a rush and you want to just get the thing done, just take a little piece of absorbent paper, or a little bit of kitchen paper, something like that. Just blot it off, and then you're good. So I would say it's longer than, just put this line here. This is a little shadow underneath the frame. It's longer than it's a lot longer than a regular nib, you know, a not bent one, just because there's so much ink in the wide position, just giving that edge. So for example, let me demo it, because you've seen me just put in that line, and it wasn't a hugely thick line. So it hasn't been, it seems to be quite dry already. And I'm just going to put the shadow, I'm going to make that a tiny bit more dilute. And again, holding my breath, because the same rule applies whether it's, I mean, you know, drawing, painting, it's the same thing, isn't it? You know, well, certainly the way I work is the same thing. It's just, I wouldn't describe myself as a watercolor painter. I would say I just color in, really. And you know, that's absolutely fine. So I'm going to use it much drier for the handles, and when they're dry, completely dry, I will put in the, you know, the little seam of metal that you get on kitchen knives. I'm going to put that on with a white gel pen. So this is my first color, and you know, you can do an awful lot of good stuff with just one color. If I put my hand on something wet, I could feel it there. So if you make a mistake, if you do a splodge, if I got a bit of a tissue, if you make a little splodge, just add loads of clean water and wash off the wet paint. And I should have a tissue somewhere very close. There you go. And then just dab it off. So yeah, that works with most colors, but some colors are very staining, and just, you know, they just cling to the paper, and you sort of get to know the culprits. Like phthalo green, for example, is very, very staining. And I'm going to do as much of my velvet black as I can, and then I'm going to give it a couple of minutes to dry. And I'm going to show you some of my favorite sketches from the last few months. And you can see, hopefully you'll be able to see why I love the A6, the tiny little book, so much. I want to show you what I did in Crete in the month of August. I went there with my family for a holiday. And I mean, I partook in all the family things, and I didn't sketch in the car.
Hi,
and so
Tanny.
And I still managed to get loads. So look, you can see I painted clean over that little bit of gel pen, and it didn't lift. So just leave that unpainted and put in the little bit of. I tend to move my clips around a little bit according to where I'm painting. Okay, we'll leave that there like that for now. Just let that dry a little bit. Okay, that's good and wet. So we'll leave that there to dry for a little bit. Is there anything else I need to do before I take a small? I'll just do that cooker hood. As you can see, I'm not exactly, I'm quite, I suppose, workmanlike when it comes to applying paint, but you can be quite rough, or at least I think you can, but as long as you don't let anything dry when you're painting an area, like you can't paint half of that and come back to it, because you won't get a nice smooth surface if you do that. You'll have a big brush stroke looking at you. And you can't get rid of it once it's there. So there's not that many rules in watercolor, I don't think. But if you follow them, it shouldn't be too difficult. Okay, let's get rid of this for a second so that I don't, you see, look at that again. If I let this little tab dangle in that wet paint, I will completely ruin the texture. All right, so this is my little tiny book. And I'll start with the Crete one, and then you never know, we might get more time. Okay, so waiting for my kids to show up to the restaurant, 15 minutes. They were 15 minutes late. We were overlooking some sea, and this is one boat, but in order to maximize my time, I drew it twice because it was bobbing one way and bobbing the other way. And then as it was pointing one direction, I filled in the bits, and then when it's pointing the other direction, I filled in the other bits. The waterproof ink, I threw it on for the shadow on the seabed, and by the time I put the watercolor on, all the ink was dry, and I could happily paint on top. So these pages, what is this? Oh, that's just one page. Oh, here we go. Wherever you're staying, you're going to get loads of time to go back at it. You can paint it in little stages, so you can give loads of time to the place you're staying. With my family, they were on a second beer, and I didn't want a second beer. Well, I might have, but I'd far rather sketch. So that gave me a chance. I'm telling you guys, you'll all be coming at me saying, "Hey, I'm addicted." I love this shape here. This fine gentleman here with his arms slung over the back of his chair, and his beautiful crisp white shirt in the strong sunlight. It was just beautiful. So the men were sitting around. My kids went to go and find waffles, and they couldn't find them, so I had loads of time to get on with the sketch. But you just start, and when you're talking about a book that size, you can get so much done in terms of your what you want to do. Inside the museum, water brush, be quiet, discreet. You might get told to put it all away, but you might not. People having a smoke and some coffee. This was the only sketch that I did that I had FOMO. My family were all down there, and here I was all on my own up in the restaurant. That was the only time I thought, I'm making bad choices in my life. I need to go get into the sea. But I'd already been in the sea like every day, so I was like, And then this was later on that afternoon. These are basically the same person, but you just draw them over and over again, you know. This is a very special memory for me because I got up before everybody else one morning, and the sun was really hazy in the distance. It's a very industrial place where we were staying. This is a bunkering station for ships. Anyway, I did my best to capture the sparkly water, and it was really hot by the time I finished, and I just jumped in, and I jumped into my painting, and I thought that was really nice. Oh, white gel pen, very useful, but look how dark I had to make the sea behind the spots. I localized it to be extra dark, just where I knew I was going to put the white gel pen. I mean, you can use one of those pens that have resist thing, you know, the masking fluid, but they tend to be a bit cloggy and so on. This is my husband, and he's delighted with that sketch of himself because he thinks he looks really kind of, you know, dangerous. But
Roisin,
again,
Roisin, can you talk a little bit about safe places to draw people? Because I know your students struggle with that.
So do I, Deirdre. So do I. I absolutely hate to be caught. So there's a couple of tricks that you'll quickly learn. If you've got no way out, if you absolutely are getting caught and someone says, "What are you doing?" or something like that, which never happens, then you say, "Oh, I'm sorry. I just have to include a person for scale. Would that be okay?" And I only had to do that once, and that was about 10 years ago. And the girls, they did not mind one bit. One of them said, "Oh, just make me a bit thinner." I was like, "Yeah, no problem." Really, you get that sometimes. The other thing you can do is look over someone's shoulder or someone's head and just pretend you're drawing like on the wall behind them. Generally speaking, people do not care what you're doing. I paint a lot on the train, so I tend to paint the next seats over. You know, I'm not going to paint the people sitting right opposite me. I'm not that brave, but I know lots of sketchers who do. Males particularly. I had a conversation with a friend of mine. He said he happens to be a black belt in Krav Maga, whatever it's called. So, you know, maybe he has a natural confidence that I'm never going to have. But I do try to. This is my son, by the way, so he was ordered to stand there. So that's, again, look, your family are there to help you out. So just ask them, just think of all the things you do for your family, and they will be more than happy to oblige. This was really good. This was a real chance in a lifetime, I think. Well, not a lifetime, but I went out one morning in the village we were staying, and a coach load of pilgrims came along. And the village where we were staying was had something very significant to do with St. Paul and a storm. And I used to know the story, but I've kind of forgotten it. But it's something to do with God quelling a storm when St. Paul asked him to. And these pilgrims, they bent their heads for prayer, and I knew that I would get a good 10 minutes. And so it transpired. And you might notice that they're all done in the same color. That is a very good tip when you want to draw people. You just don't worry about, getting colorful. Just get that one line and one bluey gray color for the shadows. If you live somewhere nice and sunny, that's going to take you a long way. And then I just made a skin color from yellow ochre, and my go-to skin color is a mixture of yellow ochre and cherry quinacridone red. And that makes a beautiful skin color. And then you can darken it or lighten it according to the amount of water you use, or you can add more burnt sienna or burnt umber, but you'll get a lovely range of skin colors that way. This little dog was running around disrupting everything, far more than I was, by the way. Nobody noticed me at all. Food sketching is really fun. So this was the night before we left, and one of my kids was taken ill, but my husband went to look after her, so I just did that. My daughter and her boyfriend doing some reading, and then in the airport. So my other daughter appeared twice in this sketch because she moved, but this was a delay of the flight, so it's a great way to it's a great way to deal with that. This was standing in a hedgerow, so it's really nice to have a tiny sketchbook and a whole setup, including, remember I was showing you those magnetic clips to clip your paint box to, and your little paint box like this will just clip on perfectly happily and it won't fall off. And I even got the little spider in a spider web. And there's something very special about feeling yourself being actually immersed in nature. And you're not even bringing it back to your studio, you're actually in it, which is a very special thing. There's a guy sitting at the bus stop, and he, you know, the way people always watch for the bus. So he's not going to turn around. These kids were, they were just like staring out to sea, you know, romantic moment again. They don't care about, you know, the woman behind them drawing. This man is driving the bus. He's not allowed to turn around. So some more beautiful bits of nature. Oh, this was a packet of fast food seaweed, which is really fun. And these were made with just like a very small reduced palette. There's some more reflections. Look, hinge, slightly darker. I left out the P. You forget how to spell when you're.
I love that.
I tell people all the time, spell it in your head or you will spell it wrong, and I still did it. You can see how the dark reflection really shows up the white gel pen. And there's your values again, you know, the dark, even though we're not talking about just one monochrome, it's the values are what makes all the difference. Look how dark it is behind the boat. It really makes it pop. Oh, top deck of a bus. It's all about the yellow. Yeah, public transport is brilliant for sketching very, very small. So you can see why some lilies. You can see why I really, really enjoy the small size.
Can you go back to the peacocks?
Oh, sure thing. Absolutely. I'm surprised you noticed those, because they had been really still just until the moment I started to draw them, and then they decided to go off and do their own thing.
They're lovely. Thank you.
This is a place called Farmley. It's a watercolor exhibition center in Phoenix Park, and these are the people looking at the exhibition. But I really was hoping to get the peacocks, and as I say, they just decided. I guess they got camera shy. They just didn't want to know. This is one from a workshop I did last August with you can see how strong the highlights are. And I don't know if you can tell, but see, do you notice how the color gets slightly darker right next to the highlights? That's what makes the highlights look shiny. It's the fact that the paint is darker. So it's down to your values. Again, it's always down. And the same with the background behind the bottles. It's a little bit darker right next to the glass. And that's the oldest medieval church still in daily use in Ireland, and that's called St. Nicholas's in Galway. Here's some more people sketching. Now, this was a market. It's a very busy market in Galway, and I just melted into the wall, you know, and I had my little box, my little book, my box of paints right there like that. And once again, I've used very few colors. I just picked out the produce that was being sold as one of my colors, and luckily it was green in the canopy. And after that, I just put on just the Fude pen, super expressive lines, and I chose a different color. You can't really tell it's a different color, but I chose green for the guys in the foreground, and then that blue gray for the people in the background. Again, the reflections are kind of slightly not, I don't think that's a very successful sketch, but kind of broken up a little bit in the water. So that's that book. And let's get on with this one, and feel free to.
Roisin,
Yes.
would you say that your sketching totally replaces photography for you?
I am a terrible photographer, and yes, do you mean in terms of capturing something lovely?
Yeah, yes. I mean, I think
Yes.
my knee-jerk reaction is to take a picture of everything, and it seems like your knee-jerk reaction is to get out your sketchbook.
Okay, it's a very good question. I wouldn't say 100% by any manner of means, because, for example, this morning the frost was just so beautiful outside the bathroom window, and that, for me, that just had to be a little video, and then I sent it into the, you know, the family thingy blob group chat thing. But I wouldn't have bothered with that because, well, first of all, I had things to do, you know, and we all have things to do. So sometimes there just isn't it's two different things. It's two very, very different things for me. And I would say that for me, sketching is a huge amount of fun. Sketching is about me having fun.
Mhm.
Photography is about capturing something beautiful. Two different things.
Mhm.
So I'm not sure if that's a very good a good way to put it, but yeah, very much two different things.
Thank you. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah, but like everyone else, my iPhone is absolutely groaning with thousands of photos and thousands of videos. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
But do you ever paint from photographs that you've taken, or do you always paint from?
No,
Okay.
I don't use photographs for painting because I sketch for the fun of it. I'm not sketching to make it perfect. I sketch
Mhm.
because let me see if I've got a good example. I have, for example, was something I did in this little book. Where is it? My little current book. Okay, so this is a funny old one. I mean, who's going to take a picture of McDonald's? But I really enjoyed the limited palette, and I really enjoyed putting the people in, and I really enjoyed making the roundy shapes with my pen. It's just such a simple thing, right? Such a simple little pleasure, like a childish pleasure, really. It's you know, that feeling of having a huge packet of coloring pens when you're a kid, and you're just like and just in that happy space. So that's what it is for me. It's a real happy space. So I'm just going to put on, this is where my values come in, and I'm just going to darken under here. Oh, and by the way, I don't know if it's in any way relevant to what we're doing here and so on, but I don't have any sort of kudos at all as an artist in Ireland at all. And for a long time that made me very cross and grumbly. And then I thought, well, that's not the type of artist I am. That's okay. There's you know, horses for courses, and it's some people paint to put a picture on the wall, and some people paint just because, you know, McDonald's looks kind of cool in you know. So it's different, and I have no ambition whatsoever to sell paintings. It's just, that's not what I do it for. I do it because life is so colorful and fun, and most of all because I just love that feeling of putting an ink line across the page. Okay, so this is a turquoise. I mixed with Aquarius green, and I did hesitate about choosing this as one of my palette colors, but I decided I would because I wanted that blue green for the rim. You know, the way that glass color is kind of like that blue green color. I'm going to darken up that glass color, but for my first layer I'll just do that one there, and that's got a kind of a shadow thing going on there. And also I noticed that our friend here had a slight bit of you can't really tell in the you can't, I'll hold it up now in a sec. You can't really tell in the camera, but I thought he looked kind of nice with his little bit of bluey green on his I don't know what to say, his torso, his what, his tires, his spare tire, his tummy. And then I used the same color for the bits of glass as well. Oh yeah, I know there was another reason I wanted to use it, because this background was kind of that color as well, and I I thought it would be pushing it too much to go for the Aquarius green. That's the Aquarius green there. Because I did want it to be colorful. I just didn't want it to be kind of clashing. So sometimes it can look really, really nice to have close colors, you know, just close colors that are close, you know, closely related. It can look really, really nice. Just going to go on top of that reflection. If you go gently enough, you shouldn't lift the oh, I forgot to do the reflection of the, oh, hang on, that is the reflection. Wait, let's put this up here. So that's got a nice little, oh, you've got to be a bit patient as well. For example, I can't do that bottom one there because it'll just run into the reflection of the pestle and mortar.
Roisin, I'm getting a little aware of the time. We have about 10 minutes left in the schedule, and I know some people may be leaving.
Of course.
You certainly can keep on going as long as it's comfortable for you, but I would like to tell the members, if any of you have a question for Roisin that you would like to ask, just unmute and you can ask it yourself. So.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely.
Roisin, thank you so much. This was very fun. When you are doing something white like seagulls against a darker sky or anything like that, do you kind of sketch out the part you want to leave white and then work around it?
That's a really good question. I have a exact sketch that I'm thinking of. And again, it's to do with values. The seagulls were in the sky. It was January. The seagulls were in the sky and they were against the red brick hotel. And against the sky, they were dark. And against the red brick hotel, they were white. I'll tell you what I do. Because I draw everything before I paint, I tend to just fire on a load of seagulls as and when I see them. Okay. And then if they're big enough, if they're meaty enough and not too fiddly, then I'm going to leave them white. And I won't paint them. And I'll tell you, I'll go further than that. I will do that thing I was just talking about there, where you darken up the area behind them and around them. So when the red brick comes close to the seagull, I will deliberately darken the red brick a little bit right next to the seagull. So the seagull ends up really standing out. Because if you don't do that, we're talking watercolor. We're not talking, well, first of all, we're not talking photography, and we're not talking, I don't know, felt tip pens or markers or whatever. So the colors are quite light anyway. You have to really big them up to get that impact. So there's your answer. And sometimes if it's dark enough, if the background is dark enough, then yes, you can use a white gel pen and you'll get the effect of a beautiful white seagull. But that only works if you've really put a lot of layers on the surface behind where the seagull is visible.
Thank you.
You're welcome. On goes the wooden pestle and mortar. So the first layer goes on, and then when it's dry, there is a lot of patience required, but this type of sketching, there's always something else to be getting on with. So I use the color, this yellow mixed with yellow ochre is one of my colors. I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of a warm straw color. And then I also had the burnt sienna mixed with a little bit of burnt umber as well. But I figured I needed a blonde wood color, and I needed a little bit of other wood for the cork stopper, for example, in the little olive oil container. There we go. You can see with the R13 paintbrush, it really is a handy, it's a handy sort of do everything brush, I think. There we go.
It has the pointiest tip of any brush I've worked with.
Oh, really, Deirdre? Because I don't have
Yes.
masses of experience. When I discovered this in 2008, 2018, I was in Porto with a wonderful student of mine who became a friend from North Carolina. And it was she who put me onto the R13. And I turned around and went straight up to the art market in the Urban Sketching Symposium where we were. And I bought the R13 and I've never looked back. It's really, really nice. Oh, I never finished that word.
Roisin, I have a question from Linda,
Uh-huh.
who says she's a novice sketcher, and she's wondering if you feel like it's a necessity to use ink pens that are, the what do you call that type of pen?
Fude pen.
Fude.
The Fude pen.
pen. Or have you ever used, or could you use other fine line pens, like, or
Of course,
ballpoints, or-
of course. So one of my longtime students always uses a Micron, and we're friends. And I tell you what, she's not for turning. And she's a really wonderful artist. And I've long since given up trying to convince her to use a Fude pen, but she's just not for her. So absolutely use whatever works for you. It happens that the Fude pen really works for me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When
Sorry?
I first started taking classes from you, Roisin, I did everything first in pencil because I never had drawn ever. And then gradually, after a month or two, I began to use a Micron pen because I was ready for pen, but I wasn't ready for a fountain pen. And so I did the Micron pens for a while, and now I'm totally converted to the Fude.
Woo!
It
And Deirdre,
can
tell
work.
me, what did you like about it? What changed your opinion or led you down that road?
It's what you said about the expressive line, mostly that you can get 3 different size lines for sure. You can get a fat one with the regular stance of the pen. If you do the tip of the pen straight on, you get a medium line. And if you turn it in the reverse, you get a fine line.
Yeah, it's very, very versatile. And if you just use it in the one position and kind of, well, I don't mean like the one position, but if you turn it as you're making a line, then it'll naturally have a different width as you go, which is very nice, very attractive. Apparently Fude means brush in Japanese. So it's supposed to give you the expressivity of a brush, but with the I suppose the convenience of the of having a reservoir of ink inside. So there we go. I guess I'm taking rather longer about this than I had meant to, but at least we're getting lots of other little tidbits in. So yeah, I mean, that brings me on to another very important point. There's time and then there's sketching time. I'm afraid that the clock just refuses to cooperate, and you never have enough time when you're sketching. And actually, I have a couple of tips for that, where one of them, the most important one really, which is that when you're starting to do your sketch, and you may have a long time, maybe you don't know how long you're going to get, maybe you're waiting for someone to come out of a shop, or I don't know, something that you just don't know how long you're going to get. Always start with the bit that caught your eye in the first place, because that way at least you'll have got the bit that you liked down. It's certainly I used to, and a lot of people will say to me that they also they spend ages fiddling around with a pillar on one side of the scene, and then they haven't even got to the the stripy tights on someone's legs or whatever it was that they liked in the first place, and time's up. So do yourself a favor and start with the bit that grabbed your eye in the first place. Also, that's going to be more inspiring as well. And I think that inspiration is a huge part of it's a huge part of being successful in your sketch. It really is. Inspiration is the wind under your wings. And the reason I sketch so much is because I was so inspired by fantastic, beautiful work of people in it that I come across over the years. And of course, if you sketch a lot, you're going to get better. That's just the way it works. So, yeah, inspiration for me is a massive thing.
Roisin, could you also talk about your philosophy about an artistic community? Because I think that's a huge part of your teaching style.
Yeah, it's a funny one, Deirdre, because, you know, like many artists, I was about me and me alone, you know, for I'm going to say decades. And then when I started teaching in 2020, it was so strange to it was like being surprised by joy, you know. Excuse me. The community that we have in my group is so positive, so enthusiastic, so accepting of each other and accepting of everybody's approach and everybody's way. And that's taught me so much about how kind people are, what a privilege it is to actually pass on the skills. But you're never alone as a sketcher when you've got technology. It's quite incredible what it's done for artists, because we tend to be quite solitary by the nature of it. But bring in a sketching group, whether it's in person, if you've joined one of your local sketching groups or your watercolor local art club or your local watercolor club. My mother, for example, she absolutely adores her sketching, and she's got, I think she's in 3 watercolor groups a week, and that is her social life. She just loves it, and I just think it's the most wonderful way to be together, because you're all expressing your own unique way of being, and it's just fantastic. So I feel hugely lucky and hugely privileged to head up the group that I do. That happened completely by chance, through that dark time we had a few years ago, and just sometimes something really, really positive comes out of something that isn't positive, you know. And I feel very blessed. And the other good thing is that once you stop obsessing about yourself, suddenly you become much happier.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that the truth? So stop, you know, obsessing, oh, my life, my career, my this, my that, and think about how to get other people's sketching experience to be enriched and improved. And lo and behold, you've really discovered one of the secrets to real joy. So
Linda here says that apparently she's part of an urban sketchers community here in Minneapolis, and she wants to know if anybody in the group here has attended. She receives their email. I'm wondering, Linda, if you would send me maybe an email contact or something. Maybe we can send that out after Roisin's demo as well, offering that up. And then Marilyn says she appreciates how you use variations of one color to unify your sketch.
That's right. It was like I was saying at the beginning. It's so easy to have a clash, but in watercolor. But if you look at my work, if you have a look through, for example, the thumbnails on my archive, my website, or on Instagram, or wherever you can find me, or my YouTube or whatever. But if you look at a lot of my pictures at the same time, you'll notice how I tend to use a very, very restricted palette. Just on that note about the urban sketching community, we have one here in Galway, and it went very, very quiet for a long time. I founded it, or co-founded it, in 2015, and it really went quiet because of the pandemic, and I kind of feared for it, really. But in the last 6 months or so, it's suddenly taken off with a vengeance. And the fun that those people have. Now, I tend not to go simply because I'm always trying to catch up with something on a Monday it's just when they meet. They're starting to meet on a Saturday as well. But the fun they have, and one of them is very good at Photoshop, and so she does all this crazy stuff with the group photo, and they have a great laugh. But they just love their get-togethers once a week, and they really, it is about the art, but it's primarily about the community, I would say. It is really primarily about the community. Yeah, it is.
You said it went sort of quiet for a while. Do you put that down to the pandemic and maybe the
I'll
revival?
tell you, it went quiet for two reasons. The pandemic, yes, was the reason behind it, but the problem was, you see, in Galway, it just never stops raining. It's not that it rains all the time, but we have showers. We have a lot of showers, and you can't sketch if it's raining. Your work will just wash right off, and it's happened to me numerous times. And because we couldn't meet indoors for a very long time, it just meant that there was nowhere to meet, because it was, I don't know, maybe we just had a spate of rainy months or something. But it was very frustrating. But it seems to have really, really taken off with a vengeance. I passed the reins to one of the members, who's just a wonderful person, and she just has a magical way about her, and they all meet, and they're not a bit put off by the cold. I don't understand it. I don't understand how they sit there in sub-zero temperatures, but they do. There's my little edge of my countertop. So slowly.
Roisin, I just sent a note to members with your website details, and explaining that there may be a free membership offer coming up for a monthly membership, and I will send them information about that.
Yeah, so the way my classes work is I teach every Saturday. In your time, Deirdre, is it about 10 a.m.?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. So it's live, and it's 9 a.m. Minnesota time, and live and recorded. Okay, so if you can't make it for any reason, the link is sent to you to the recording after class, and they're always 90 minutes long. Sometimes they end up running over a little bit. But again, you could just catch up with the recording if necessary. And then I have two. Basically, you pay. You can buy a class and just attend for one class, but it's much better value if you become a monthly member. So I charge $14.95. That's about $16, Sturge, or something like that, for the regular membership, and then that's one class a week. That's Saturdays, so you get 4 classes for that per month. And then if you want to really push the boat out and pay €24.95, so it's about $26.50 or something, then you get a second class weekly as well on a Tuesday, which is about 2 p.m. 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And again, same deal, live and recorded. And then you get a little gift in the post once a month, because if you're on the higher membership, because I believe that people should open something that isn't a bill. Right, Deirdre?
I wait for that brown envelope.
So you get an envelope, and you never know what's going to be in it. This month it was a full pan of velvet black, which people went nuts for. And I have something very fun for 2 months' time, and then I have a little surprise for 1 month's time. But anyway, my wonderful webmaster Ronan has set up a deal for this month, and the offer expires on the 14th of February. But if you take out your membership anytime between now and the 14th, it's good for a month. So it's good for a month from the date you join, and it's free. It's free. So that is not bad. You get a month's free membership, and there's absolutely no strings attached whatsoever. The only string attached is, I suppose, that it's the regular one. It's not the fancy one, but still, that's 4 classes for that membership. Four classes on a Saturday, and also the occasional extra class, because sometimes I just have a whim do an extra class. And also I'm going to be starting back with the socials, so we meet just like we are now. We meet once in a while to have a glass of something nice and a chat about some aspect of art. Maybe like one time we all said where we'd like to go for an art workshop, you know, that kind of thing. So it's always art themed. So I know many of you would probably want to get on with your day, and I just want to say thanks so much to all of you for listening to me and watching me, you know, do my thing here, because it's something I love to do.
One last question, Roisin, from the audience, from Barb,
Mhm.
who was wondering, I think, about traveling with the Fude pens and I suppose the ink that
Very good question, and I am going to give you a very nice answer. This little guy is a very high-tech plastic vial, and it's got a screw top, and it doesn't, thank you, Maggie, thank you. It's got a screw top, and it will not leak. However, you might be able to see that the other one did leak. I always carry two because Fude pens drink ink. They bois l'encre, I'm afraid to say. It is very frustrating to be out with your Fude pen and find it's empty. So I always travel with two colors. This is the Frida by Roaring Klingner, and this is the Document Ink Brown by De Atramentis. And I don't know what happened. Maybe this is a dud, or maybe the lid is cracked, but this leaked for the first time about 10 days ago. And as you can see, it luckily it was in my sketch pocket in the special little ink container. Oh, thank you for saying so, Kerry. Thanks so much. So I was able to get away with it. It didn't ruin anything. But you can take those in your carry-on in the plane. Just remember to tell the guy in security that you've got ink, because otherwise they'll search your bag. And you're very welcome, Jean. Because they will be like, hey, you've got liquids and you didn't tell us about it. So yeah, that's all.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Oh, and don't open your Foodie pens on the plane, or your any pens with free ink in them, like any fountain pen. Do not open them on the plane, because they will flood. They will flood, and you'll be there pressing your little button for the stewards to come along and rescue you.
Oh,
yeah, they just flood. Yeah, I don't know what it is. Something to do with the pressure. They just go bloop, and they just do a big blot. So it could be on your clothes, it could be on your paper. Yeah, just be aware of that. But I travel with them all the time. All the time. I travel quite a bit for work, and
good to know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Lots of people have been enjoying this in the chat. There are lots of thank yous rolling by.
Well, I thank you all. I thank you all. Thank you for your appreciation and your attention. I really appreciate that you just, gave me your time.
Roisin, would you like to stop, or do you want to just continue?
I'm fine, Deirdre. I'm not in any particular rush. If I don't finish this now, it'll be like, when am I going to finish it? So I might as well there's very little to do anyway.
All right, well, let's say 5 more minutes. How's that?
Okay, that's perfect, Deirdre. That's perfect. I mean, all I really wanted to do was just show you all the little techniques, but I've kind of done most of them now, really. So I mean, yeah, it's all about, what else did I want to say? I suppose the drawing one is really, really critical. I sort of feel that drawing, I think some people say, oh, you don't have to learn to draw. And that is true. You don't have to learn to draw, but you might like to learn to draw. And maybe there's a gap in, I don't know about in the US, but certainly where I live, there seems to be a kind of a gap where people used to teach strong drawing and then they didn't for a while, and then I don't know, maybe it was the skills were forgotten, but drawing has always been my thing and something I absolutely love. I love making shapes with a pen. How could you not? So yeah, it is a steep learning curve when you start, but it's like learning a language. You know, it compounds and you get more and more fluent. And with a certain amount of ink under the bridge, you are suddenly going to go, oh my goodness, I can really draw. And I would definitely say, Deirdre will know from my group. So I forgot to mention that we have a Facebook group where everybody can post their sketches that they've done in class or any work that they've done from life. Okay, so there's a zero tolerance. I'm very mean. There's a zero tolerance on any work from photos, because there's lots of groups for that, but my group is not one of them. If you want to get better, if you want to get really, really skilled for observation, ditch the photos. And as I do use photos myself. I make canvases with you know, kind of like I don't know, deep sea creatures and maybe jungles and kind of stuff like that. I have to use photos for my references, you know, because they're and I play with them and I mess with them. So there's of course there's a place for using photos to make art, but for sketching, if you want to get really, really skilled, leave the phone in the pocket and just use your eyes. You will see much more clearly. You will see much more detail. You will see much more accurately, because photos can get a little bit distorted as well. So yeah, I would just say if you can resist the temptation, and by the way, that includes coloring as well. And I know that sounds a bit crazy, but you need to be in front of your subject to see all the lines, and you also need to be in front of your subject to see the colors. For example, your eyes will see the subtlety of the difference in color between the reflection and the subject. Your camera won't. It won't. Even the best camera, well, maybe that's not true. Maybe the best camera will, but my camera won't for sure. And you can tend to be lulled into a false sense of security with a camera. You can trust the camera and you shouldn't. The only thing you can trust is your eyes. Deirdre, what did Marilyn say there? She tried urban sketching, but
made the mistake of not using a pen. I tried to watercolor paint without sketching. I'm a lifelong
Something.
sketcher, maybe
I'll tell you
sketcher.
myself.
Oh, sketcher.
I'll tell you, am I on? I'll tell you myself.
yeah, go for it, Marilyn.
Okay, I'm a lifelong sketcher and I love to use the pen, but I really have tried to avoid it as much as I can in my watercolor painting. But I'm heading back for the pen because that's where my heart is for sure. And I only went a couple of times with one of the local urban sketch groups, but I think when the weather gets better, I'm going to do that again. And I'm about to take off to Hawaii to visit my cousin for a couple of weeks, and I think this would be a fun thing to do rather than doing any serious painting while I'm there. But sketching will be a great way to capture some great memories.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I would say that there's a number of urban sketchers who only use a brush. I personally am completely surgically attached to my pen. Sometimes I start with just a brush, but I do love to use that pen. I just do. But there's, you know, as they say, there's 100 ways to skin a cat, or whatever the expression is. You know, you just do whatever works for you, I guess. Whatever works for you, whatever sings for you and speaks to you. Yeah, like, yeah, there's do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do a tiny bit of paint velvet black here, because those reflections should be a little bit darker than you can see immediately, even though I just put a tiny lick of dilute velvet black on that reflection, suddenly it gets more reflection-y when it's a little bit darker.
What makes the white pop?
Mhm.
It doesn't it? Doesn't it?
Yeah.
I'm also going to beef up this. I can see the ink the paint hasn't quite dried.
Marilyn, are you still on?
Yes, I am.
Would that small sketchbook be workable for you? Because I think that's such a great idea for traveling.
Oh, yeah, I've done a lot. I've used a small sketchbook quite a bit on traveling when I've traveled.
Okay,
And some I've got some nice paintings, but other ones are kind of not so, good. But things vary. But this is I don't know if you can see this. This is what I did. The first time I went out, it was in the state capitol at St. Paul. And
Let
they
me
had this
quick-
beautiful marble.
quick spotlight you.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
okay.
beautiful.
So
Yeah,
they
that is
had-
a very tiny sketchbook, isn't it?
yeah, yep, it is very tiny.
That's
Yep.
lovely. That's very, I like the almost abstract nature of what you've done there, you know?
Mhm.
Well, it was fun to try to capture the feel of the beautiful marble, just beautiful marble. And then I did find the other one. Then I got wild. Now I had a little tiny micro pen, and I tried to do no, I got
That's
something away.
gorgeous. That is so full of life.
But I mean, I made mistakes, but I just tried to capture what I could see and how it looked to me.
Yeah.
That was kind of fun. So as I say, I like to sketch, and I've done it all my life. And I only started watercolor painting after I retired. So it's been about 18 years, I suppose.
I have a question.
Yes.
How you clean your fountain pen?
How do you clean them?
Mm-hmm.
That's a very good question. That's a very good question. As a few people have been having trouble with their pens, including myself,
Yes.
in my little Facebook group for the last couple of weeks. And there's one lady in the group who knows everything about pens. So she says that you just rinse them out with warm water every once in a while. Deirdre, do you remember, did she say anything more specific than that, or was it just the warm water?
I think she said to put a little Dawn dish detergent in. That's what I remember. And I did that yesterday. And really, I had to, in a little jar, like a yogurt size container, I put my nibs in there. And I probably had to rinse the water 3 or 4 times. There was that much in there.
Oh, gink. Okay.
And they worked much better. But I did.
Oh, yay. That's so good to hear, because
Yeah.
mine are beginning to play up. And to be honest with you, I have been incredibly, I've had very poor ink hygiene, I have to say, poor pen hygiene. So I need to do better, and because you take it for granted when they're flowing beautifully, but really you should. This lady Jan, in my group, Jan Scott, she says you should. She said you should do them once a month, but like, I haven't cleaned a pen in 10 years, so and it's just lately they've suddenly decided, okay, enough is enough.
Yeah, and I think she also said for a quick fix, just take and run hot running water over the nib, and that will
Okay.
correct it. But they
Okay,
do
well,
thorough cleaning.
Okay, that's good to hear. That's good to hear. I shall do that. I shall actually do that. And we all want it to work now, but sometimes you just have to do your homework, so to speak, and do the
Right.
chores.
I stopped using them because of that.
And what brands did you use?
Now I don't even remember. Let's see if I have it.
Because all brands are not equal, and some you have to get the ink right and you have to get the pen right.
Oh,
If
okay.
either one is wrong, you're going to have trouble.
It's a reform.
Yeah, I had problems with that.
Mm.
I'm having problem for a long time, and I have all different colors, but they are not working.
If you want to there's one extremely economical set of Fude pens. It's Deirdre, the brand is Jinhao, and they're
How
for
you spell it?
kids. They're for kids. You get 12 in a set, and they are not disposable. They are refillable. They each come with a converter, the bit that holds
Yep.
the ink in the pen, and they've got the lids are in the shape of a shark, or they are in the shape of a swan. But I've bought the shark ones, and you get 12 in a set for like maybe $20, something like that. And they're all different colors, so you can put different, they're great for trying out a new color of ink, and you don't
Yeah.
want to sort of, you know, use your most favorite best pen for that new color. So yeah,
What is the name?
well, the brand is Jinhao. I'm sure I could find a link and send it to Deirdre. But if
Right.
you put into the search bar Jinhao shark Fude pens, I bet you they'd come up.
Okay.
Yeah, the trick is to be sure it says Fude, because
Yeah, you must say Fude. Yeah.
yeah,
Sometimes they say bent nib, and that'll do fine as well.
yeah, I've got a set of those, and I wouldn't use them every day, but they work really well for you know, like you said, a touch of color or whatever.
Yeah. Like say you had this crazy idea of, I don't know, doing little pink love hearts all over something. Well, then you get your fuchsia ink by Diatramentus. I have every color of ink. So it's just really nice to have different colors in your set at any one time.
Well, Roisin, I think we've come to the time where we need to say adieu.
Oh,
If we have kept 26 people here for the whole time. So if those people would like to unmute, and let's give Roisin a round of applause. It was a stellar demo, Roisin.
thank you.
Thank you.
So much fun.
Thank
Great.
you so much. I've never had a round of applause on Zoom.
You've never had what?
I've never had a clap on Zoom.
Oh,
Thank you. You're too kind. Deirdre, and Lynn, thank you so much for your very, very relaxed approach. It's been really enjoyable.
well, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I will be in touch and get all the details up to what I'm going to send to members. So members, watch for an email either from me or from North Star Water Media Society that will have links, and I'll also put it on our webpage, I think, and Facebook for sure.
Will you put the pen names and everything also, please?
I'll be able to print out this chat,
Okay.
and then I will have all that stuff, and I'm sure Roisin will send me more info. So,
I will do.
That
I
will
will
be
do.
all right.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Roisin.
Thank
See you
you.
Saturday.
Pleasure. See you Saturday.
All right.
Bye, guys.
Thank
you.